As we've discussed in multiple prior videos, DC has some of the toughest gun laws in the country. And a lot of folks don't know that if you move to DC and bring a firearm with you, the law requires you to notify MPD immediately after bringing the firearm to the district. One way to comply with the requirement is to personally communicate your intent to MPD to register the firearm prior to bringing it into the district. So this creates an obvious problem for individuals who move to DC and are unaware of the requirement, because by the time you realize that this unique and cumbersome requirement exists, it's likely too late. So now you have an illegal gun in Washington, DC. You can't transport it because carrying a pistol without a license in DC is a felony. Meanwhile, every day the gun is in your home, you are committing the crime of possession of an unregistered firearm. Oh, and I should also mention, DC charges you for the bullet. Possession of unregistered ammunition is, like possession of an unregistered firearm, a misdemeanor offense that carries a maximum penalty of 1 year in jail and or a $2,500 fine. While you don't have to register your bullets, you are legally only allowed to have bullets that belong to a registered firearm. So if your firearm is unregistered, the bullets are also illegal. At this point, your options are basically do nothing and hope you never get caught and arrested, risk getting caught by transporting the firearm out of the district, but also potentially committing a more serious felony crime of carrying a pistol without a license. Or there is actually one way to legally get out of this situation, and I'll explain it in this video. My name is Joseph Scrofano, and I'm the founder of Scrofano Law PC, where we represent individuals under investigation or charged with a crime in the District of Columbia, Northern Virginia, and Maryland. In this video, I'll break down DC Code 7-2507.05, a law that provides limited immunity to people who surrender firearms, destructive devices, or ammo without facing prosecution for unlawful possession. This is the DC Code's amnesty provision for surrendering unregistered firearms. Under this code provision, anyone who legally possesses a gun can voluntarily surrender it to the chief of police. If you follow the right steps, you get immunity from prosecution for illegal possession at the time of surrender. Sounds simple, right? Well, there's more to it. This immunity only applies to the act of surrender. If the weapon was used in a crime, or if you're caught with it outside the surrender process, you're not protected. So it's crucial to understand the limits of this law. It is also important that you make a record that your intent is to clearly and unequivocally surrender and abandon any unregistered firearm and or ammunition. Keep in mind, this does not protect you if the gun is linked to a prior crime or give immunity for any other criminal offense. It's not a get out of jail free card. It's a narrow window of protection. That's why it's best to have a lawyer contact MPD on your behalf. We've handled these surrenders numerous times for clients, and I can explain to you a few important tips about the process. The way we express the client's clear and unequivocal intent to surrender and abandon the firearm is immediately prior to the client leaving the house to turn in the firearm. We email MPD Firearms Branch and state, we have a client en route to, let's say, the 1st District who has an intent to clearly and unequivocally surrender and abandon an unregistered firearm and ammunition. That way, should the client get stopped on the way, there is a written record of the client's intent. That said, because the law allows the person surrendering the firearm to be anonymous, we do not state the client's name in the email. Another important point to keep in mind is you should never just walk into a police station unannounced with a gun and state, I have a gun. Having gone through this process numerous times, I can tell you that most MPD officers and station clerks who you will run into have no idea this law even exists. That is despite the fact that MPD literally advertises it on their website. The last thing you want to do for your own safety is to attempt to surrender a firearm without coordinating it in advance. For clients, even before we send the email, we call the district in which the client intends to surrender and make them aware of what's happening. Oftentimes, the station clerk will have no idea what we're talking about, and we'll have to escalate the call and the situation to a watch commander or other MPD official that understands the law. So here are some good rules of thumb. Number one, do not walk into the police station unannounced with the gun. Number 2, contact MPD in advance, or better yet, have your lawyer do it. Number 3, arrange a time and safe location for the surrender. Lastly, get proof of the surrender like a signed property receipt. How should you transport the firearm? I always recommend the clients put the firearm in a box or case and make sure it's unloaded. Place the case in the trunk of your vehicle. If you don't have a vehicle, then I recommend renting one. If you have a vehicle like an SUV or pickup truck that doesn't have a trunk, make sure you use a case with a lock and place it as far as possible from your reach. Carrying under the District of Columbia is defined as a firearm being within reach, and again, you want to minimize the amount of time you are actually carrying the pistol. You should not call attention to yourself in transporting it. Because the District of Columbia is such an unfriendly place for firearm owners, it is not at all uncommon or out of the ordinary for a random citizen to call the police on someone just because they see them possessing a firearm. You should know that when you arrive, you are under no obligation whatsoever to provide your name, identification, or any personal information about yourself. Keep in mind, though, that nothing prohibits the officers from turning on their body-worn camera, which means you may end up getting recorded. Now, some MPD officers may also try to get cute and ask, what is your name? Where'd you get the firearm? The law does not prohibit them from asking questions, but keep in mind the law unequivocally states that a person surrendering an unregistered firearm shall not be required to furnish identification, photographs, or fingerprints. That means the law is absolutely clear. You do not have to answer the questions or identify yourself. And we recommend that you follow the law. Will MPD test the gun? Yes. They'll check if it was used in a crime. The law instructs them to check with the Office of the Attorney General for the District of Columbia and the United States Attorney's Office to see if there is any evidence that was used in a crime. It will involve them sending the firearm to the Department of Forensic Sciences for testing. So, can you ever get the firearm back? No. Once surrendered, it's gone for good. Once it's determined it's not been used in a crime, the law requires MPD to destroy it. Because the law does carry some risks, we strongly recommend you contact an attorney to help orchestrate the process. The last thing to know is that this statute is not a defense to possession of an unregistered firearm or carrying a pistol without a license. If you are independently arrested in the District of Columbia for one of those charges, you cannot later claim that you were only carrying because you intended to voluntarily surrender the firearm at some later or future date. Again, you must be able to demonstrate a clear and unequivocal intent to surrender and abandon the firearm prior to interacting with law enforcement. Having an experienced criminal defense lawyer coordinate the surrender gives you legal protections, peace of mind, and proper documentation. You or someone you care about has an illegal firearm in DC and wants to surrender it safely, contact us at Scrofano Law PC today for a confidential consultation. We'll help you do it the right way, protect your rights, and avoid criminal exposure. Or if you like this video, please consider giving us a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel to learn more about legal topics and issues in the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Northern Virginia. Remember, ignorance of the law is not a defense, and anyone in this country can be arrested at any time for any reason. So stay informed and stay out of trouble.